This podcast is brought to you by Wizard.ai.
Welcome back to the AI Analysis Podcast. Today we're looking at an episode of the Average Intelligence Podcast that will definitely divide listeners.
Oh, absolutely.
Featuring Candace Owens, surrounded by a group of feminists, and it was, well, quite the spectacle.
It really was. And our mission today, really, is to unpack the core arguments we saw, maybe some of the underlying assumptions, and just the general dynamics that unfolded in that video.
Yeah, trying to give you, the listener, a clearer picture of what was actually being debated and maybe why it got so heated.
Exactly. And it was certainly illuminating watching the Average Intelligence Podcast's reaction to. They didn't just summarize, they really peeled back the layers, didn't they?
They did. They exposed the logical strengths, but also, some pretty glaring weaknesses in the points being made on both sides, actually.
So we're going to use their analysis, their reactions, kind of as our guide through this whole thing.
Sounds good. Right from the start, the moment that Jubilee video kicked off, it was obvious this was going to be provocative. Candace Owens really didn't hold back.
No, she definitely set the stage immediately.
So Candace Owens opens with this statement that just immediately grabs you, doesn't it? She basically claims right out of the gate that the sexual revolution has devalued women and made them infinitely less happy.
Wow. Yeah, that's a heck of an opening line.
It really is a very strong position, especially considering, how many people see that era as fundamentally liberating for women.
Right.
And she didn't stop there. She sort of elaborated, saying her reasoning was that women are now, quote, giving up their goods for free.
That phrasing itself is interesting.
It is, and she linked that directly to men consequently not marrying these women or having long-term relationships, which in her view is the direct cause of women's unhappiness and this perceived lower value.
What's really fascinating there, I think, is how the whole conversation instantly gets framed around this one. Very specific and, pretty controversial take on a huge societal shift.
Definitely.
When we talk sexual revolution, generally we mean the 60s, the 70s, right? That whole period of massive cultural change.
Birth control becoming widespread.
Exactly. Looser norms around sex, big shifts in gender roles. A lot of people see that as opening doors, giving women more autonomy.
But Owens comes in and flips it completely. She frames that liberation as, the source of decline. The main reason, she suggests, for women being less happy and less valued.
It's a very, very particular lens to view such a complex historical period through. It just immediately sets up this conflict.
And you could almost feel the pushback coming in the Jubilee video itself, almost instantly. One participant challenges her with a really jarring statistic.
I remember this part.
She says 60% of women who are murdered by their intimate partners. And then she really presses Candace on it, asking, how is it that women are so valued in the home, and yet that's the place where they're at the most danger?
Right, a direct challenge to the idea that traditional structures inherently value women more.
Exactly. And watching the Average Intelligence Podcast react to this exchange, their observation was, I thought, spot on. They immediately flagged it as a really shaky argument, logically speaking.
Even if the statistic itself is accurate.
Right, even if the number is correct. They pointed out the classic correlation equals causation fallacy potentially being used there.
Which happens all the time in these debates.
All the time. And they kind of joked that, that statistic doesn't exactly make marriage sound like the safest place for women either, which undermines Candace's implied point a bit.
And this just highlights such a critical point about logical fallacies, doesn't it? How easy it is to get tripped up if you're not careful, especially when data seems to back up a narrative. That correlation does not equal causation idea is so fundamental for you, the listener, to keep in mind. It's like the classic example. Ice cream sales go up in summer, right? And drownings also go up in summer.
Okay.
Does eating ice cream cause drowning? Obviously not. They're just both correlated with the third thing, hot weather.
Right. People swim more and eat more ice cream when it's hot.
Exactly.
Okay.
So here, that statistic about intimate partner violence, while tragic and potentially factual, doesn't automatically prove anything about the sexual revolution's specific impact on women's happiness or their supposed devaluation.
It's a leap in logic.
It is. And Candace herself tried to clarify, didn't she? She pointed out that generally you're more likely to be murdered by someone you know, regardless.
Yeah, and she threw in another stat saying something like the most violent relationships are between lesbian partners.
Right, which again might be statistically true in some data set,
Really?
but how does it directly support or refute the core claim about the sexual revolution and heterosexual relationships?
It feels like a deflection, almost.
It can feel that way. The main takeaway here, I think, for anyone listening, is always question if a statistic, even an accurate one, is actually proving the point it's being used for. Or is it just something happening nearby?
Data can be powerful, but easily misused to build a misleading story. We saw that right there.
Absolutely.
So, okay, if it wasn't just the sexual revolution causing these big shifts for women, what else was going on? The discussion in the Jubilee video did broaden out a bit.
Yeah, another participant brought up a different angle.
Right. She argued the sexual revolution was key because it increased women's ability to leave the house, women's ability to control their own reproductive capabilities, women's ability to control their own capacity within the workforce. A more traditional feminist perspective, maybe?
A perspective focused on increased agency and opportunity.
But then the Average Intelligence podcast reactor offered a more nuanced view on this, too. They suggested, well, maybe it was less the sexual revolution and more about just advances in medicine and feminine hygiene products that really enabled women to enter the public sphere more easily.
Interesting. So like practical physical advancements.
Yeah. Though they did concede the birth control pill was part of it, allowing control over reproduction, but they argued it wasn't like the only thing. It felt like an attempt to sort of disentangle these different historical threads that often get bundled together.
And this is where I think the nuance gets really interesting, and maybe where I slightly differ from the reactor's emphasis.
Oh, how so?
Well, while things like, better sanitation, improved menstrual products, those were absolutely important for women's mobility and participation in public life. No question.
Sure, basic practicalities matter hugely.
But I think maybe, just maybe, the reactor slightly underestimated the sheer transformative power of the birth control pill itself.
You see it as more central.
I kind of do. If we connect it to the bigger picture, the pill was arguably a cornerstone of the sexual revolution precisely because it fundamentally decoupled sex from reproduction on a mass scale in a way nothing else really had before.
Right, that was unprecedented control.
Exactly. It wasn't just another helpful invention. It felt like a pivotal one. It gave women unprecedented control over their bodies, their futures, their life plans. This reproductive autonomy, I'd argue, created a unique historical moment.
Opening doors to education, careers.
Dramatically. Opportunities that were previously just so constrained by the constant risk and reality of unintended pregnancy. So while those other advances were definitely important parts of the puzzle, for me, the pill's specific role in enabling women's broader public participation makes it a real hallmark of the sexual revolution's impact. It's hard to imagine the scale of change without it.
That's a fair point. It's hard to overstate how revolutionary that control really was. It touched everything, didn't it? The ability to plan, to choose.
It really did. A huge piece of the puzzle, as you said.
Okay, so moving on from the historical context, the conversation in that Jubilee video then really zeroed in on this idea of female happiness and fulfillment. And it quickly fell into what I often think of as the either trap.
Ah, yes, the career versus family dichotomy, still so prevalent.
Still so prevalent. Candace Owens really doubled down here. She asserted that women find the most fulfillment from having a family because it's natural.
Okay, invoking natural. Always a loaded term.
Very. She claimed, flat out, your job cannot replace the feeling of having a family. And she went further, saying women shouldn't even try to be the exception, meaning focus primarily on career, because that path, she argued, leads straight to unhappiness.
Wow. So basically, don't pursue high-powered careers if you want to be happy.
Pretty much. She even used her own life as an example, saying that even though she's a published author of a New York Times best-selling book, she'd choose her kids over her book for happiness, no question.
Which is a valid personal choice, of course,
Yeah.
but projecting it as a universal female imperative is something else.
Exactly. It felt like such a classic framing, this idea that women must choose career or family. And it still dominates these talks, even though, you look around, so many women are navigating both, successfully or jugglingly, but they're doing it.
And what's fascinating, or maybe frustrating, is how this narrative just steamrolls over the lived reality of so many people, women and men, and it reinforces these really quite dated expectations.
Oh, right.
The Average Intelligence podcast reactor really hammered this point. They pushed back hard on that all-or-nothing thinking. They called it the Highlander paradox.
Huh. Yeah, there can be only one.
Exactly. A pretty memorable way to put it. They argued quite rightly that women do both all the time. The idea of this strict binary is
Yeah.
just not how most modern lives work.
It isn't.
And yeah, they acknowledge, sure, high-powered careers can affect the timing of family or maybe slow down advancement for a bit while raising kids.
That's realistic.
But they also brought up the statistical trend of many women showing a shift in priorities towards family in their mid to late 30s.
Yeah.
Not necessarily abandoning careers, but maybe rebalancing.
A natural evolution for many people?
Right, so this either-or framing just feels incredibly reductive. It ignores the complexities, ignores men's roles and desires in family life too, and just creates this false choice that doesn't help anyone understand fulfillment.
And predictably, maybe, this whole argument about fulfillment quickly devolved into a battle of statistics, a real tug-of-war.
Oh, here we go. The dueling surveys.
Exactly. One participant in the Jubilee video threw out the claim, stay-at-home mothers are more likely to report being depressed, they're more likely to report having anxiety and anger.
Okay, citing potential downsides of the traditional role.
Then they added another layer. Working mothers today spend more time with their children than women did in the 1960s that were at home.
That one sounds counterintuitive on the surface.
It does. And Candace Owens immediately fired back, I have read the exact opposite. So direct contradiction.
Of course, data supporting both sides, or claims of it anyway.
And then, just to muddy the waters even more, another person chimed in saying women choosing careers are finding themselves leaning more onto medicines like Xanax.
Implying career focus leads to anxiety medication.
Wow. It just becomes this mess of conflicting claims backed by vague references to studies or stats. It's such a good reminder, isn't it, that even things presented as facts can be incredibly misleading if you don't know the methodology behind them.
It really, really is.
Yeah.
And it raises that crucial question for all of us, for you listening. How responsible are we for critically evaluating where information comes from? Especially when we're talking about something as fuzzy and subjective as happiness.
It's so hard to measure objectively.
Exactly. The Average Intelligence podcast reactor voiced extreme skepticism about surveys on these topics, and honestly, I share that skepticism. They pointed out the huge potential for hidden biases. Sample bias is massive.
How so?
Well, like they said, if you survey people in high-earning career fields about career fulfillment, and then survey married people with families about family happiness, guess what? You're likely to find people fulfilled by the thing you selected them for.
Ah, right. You're pre-selecting for the answer you want.
Precisely. It's often a case of confirmation bias, finding data that fits what you already believe. Sometimes unintentional, sometimes maybe not.
And the reactor also took issue with that specific claim about working moms spending more time with kids than 1960s stay-at-home moms.
Yeah, they called that one out pretty directly.
Called it mathematically inaccurate if you actually account for, an 8-hour workday plus commute time for the working mother.
It does seem logically challenging unless the definition of time spent is very specific, like maybe focused quality time versus just being present.
Maybe, but it highlights the need to scrutinize those kinds of claims. They also made an interesting side observation, didn't they, about pets?
Oh yeah, the pet ownership thing. It was anecdotal, they admitted. But they noted the rise in pet ownership, especially among single people, particularly women, and how some seem to treat pets almost like surrogate children.
Fulfilling a nurturing need, perhaps.
Possibly. It's a subtle, maybe, reflection of shifting societal needs for companionship, for nurturing, outside of traditional family structures. An interesting observation, even if it's not hard data.
Definitely something to think about. And then amidst all this back and forth about stats and happiness came a moment that honestly made me do a double take.
Oh, what was that?
A participant debating feminism with Candace Owens just casually stated that a bunch of government officials in the CIA funded the feminist movement.
Wait, what? The CIA?
That was my reaction, and the Average Intelligence podcast reactor said the exact same thing. They were like, I did not know that, and I actually went back and double-checked it like 3 times.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
It's not something you hear every day in discussions about feminism's origins.
Not at all. My first thought was, wow, who knew? Maybe there's way more to the history of these social movements than the standard textbook version suggests.
It definitely throws a curveball, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And if we try to connect that, even tentatively, to the bigger picture, it really underscores how crucial understanding the different historical phases, the waves of feminism, actually is.
You mean like first wave, second wave?
Exactly. First wave, largely focused on suffrage, getting the vote. Second wave, really tackling workplace equality, reproductive rights, domestic violence issues in the 60s and 70s. Then third and fourth waves, broadening the focus even further.
Right. Different goals, different contexts.
And the lack of that kind of historical nuance in the Jubilee video seemed to cause a lot of friction. People were constantly butting heads, as the reactor put it.
Because they weren't talking about the same thing.
Pretty much. It seemed like some were focused on a very specific, maybe more contemporary version of feminism, while others were thinking of feminism as this big historical umbrella term.
Which leads to talking past each other.
Completely. And that CIA claim, whether it holds water or not after deep investigation, just highlights how complex and sometimes murky the real origins and influences on social movements can be.
It makes you realize you can't just take these terms at face value.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
It forces you to question not just what's being said now, but where these ideas actually came from, who might have benefited from promoting them, and why. Always good to check sources, especially on surprising claims like that.
Definitely. That CIA bit really stood out. Makes you wonder how many narratives we just accept without digging deeper, you know.
For sure. Always worth verifying.
Stop wasting your time on manually editing your videos. The secret AI tool will do the work for you. One of the best things about it is that it gives your video the potential to go viral. Visit this page, sign in, create a project by clicking on this button. Choose a video that you want to use. Click on the AI clip button. Wait for the magic. It is scanning through the video and looking for the parts that has the potential to go viral. Instead of editing the video by yourself, it does the work for you. It even generates headline and captions which fit your video. Another surprise is that they generate video description or social post for you to use. Once done, click Export to Post.
Welcome back. Before the break, we heard that surprising claim about the CIA, but the debate quickly shifted back to these fundamental ideas about societal power. And Candace Owens made another really direct, really controversial claim.
She did. What was it again?
She asserted, we live under a matriarchy, not a patriarchy. People are being very much influenced socially and politically by women.
Okay. Wow. So flipping the standard script entirely.
Entirely. And it became immediately clear, watching the exchange, that the participants were just operating from completely different dictionaries, basically.
Right.
Their understandings of patriarchy and matriarchy were just worlds apart.
And that's what's so fascinating, isn't it? That immediate definitional clash.
Yep.
It really highlights a crucial distinction, something maybe listeners can take away. The difference between de jure power, meaning power by law,
Okay.
and de facto power, meaning power in actual practice, in reality.
Right. The law versus how things actually work.
Exactly. Because Princella, one of the feminists in the video, she directly challenged Candace using the literal dictionary definition of patriarchy.
Yeah, I remember she laid it out pretty clearly.
She did. She said it means father rule, where government positions are held mostly by men and women are largely excluded. Then she backed it up with stats.
Right, the numbers for Congress, like 25% women in the House, 28% in the Senate.
And historically, like 3.3% overall in Congress. Really low numbers.
Based on those numbers, she said, you know, by denotative definition, we literally live in a patriarchy.
A very clear, data-driven argument based on the standard definition.
But Candace is arguing based on perceived social and political influence, not just formal positions held.
Exactly. And that's the tension. While it's true, legally speaking, women aren't excluded from power in the U.S. today, the de jure situation has changed. The de facto reality, the actual numbers in government, in Fortune 500 CEO positions, in finance, still lean heavily male due to historical legacies and ongoing dynamics.
So observationally, the matriarchy claim, using the standard definition of ruling structures, is pretty hard to defend with data.
It is, based on those traditional metrics of who holds the formal reins of power. Candace seems to be using a different metric, focusing on cultural sway or influence.
Which is harder to quantify, I guess.
Much harder. And that led the conversation down another path, didn't it? Into voting patterns.
Yeah, it did. Candace seemed to imply that some women politicians might vote against their own interests, especially on things like reproductive rights.
Suggesting their values or priorities are just different, perhaps.
Oh, right. She attributed it to different values or different priorities. But Princella offered a starkly different explanation for why some women might vote that way.
Okay, what was her take?
She put it down to a lack of education, a lack of knowledge. She even cited a statistic, or maybe a commonly stated figure, that the average reading comprehension in the United States is 6th grade.
Ouch.
Oh,
Pretty bold claim about voter intelligence.
it really is. She basically argued if we educate the women better, they won't vote against their interest. A very direct link between education level and voting choice.
And how did the Average Intelligence podcast reactor take that?
Oh, they pushed back strongly on that one. They really disagreed with the whole less educated premise being the primary driver.
What was their counter?
They pointed out that statistically, women actually tend to perform better than their male counterparts academically across various levels, so the lack of education argument didn't quite hold water for them.
Okay, challenging the premise directly.
Yeah. And they also brought in a really important angle, classism. They argued that it's often the middle class and upper middle class who are more politically influential anyway, and they tend to vote for policies that benefit their economic interests.
So shifting the focus from pure intelligence or education to economic self-interest and class dynamics.
Exactly. It was a direct challenge to that simplistic idea that voting patterns boil down to just being smart enough or educated enough.
And that really raises an important question for us and for you listening, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
How often do we try to oversimplify these incredibly complex things like why people vote the way they do?
All the time. We look for easy answers.
We do. But voter behavior is almost never about just one thing, like education. The reactor's point about class, about economic motives, it adds such crucial layers. People vote based on values, sure, but also their jobs, their wallets, their communities, the information they trust.
It's a whole messy mix.
It really is. And saying it's just about lack of education risks being dismissive and, frankly, inaccurate. It ignores the very real, very diverse motivations people have.
Absolutely. Then the discussion pivoted slightly again, talking about women in the workplace and the glass ceiling.
Right, the idea of invisible barriers.
A male participant, Adam, made the point that, yeah, men might still hold most top jobs, but he argued the explosion of feminism has led to women entering companies and rising into power, both politically and economically.
So seeing feminism as actively breaking down those barriers.
Yeah, he saw it as proof that social pressures are actually breaking apart as soon as feminism comes into play. Like progress is happening because of it.
Okay, a positive view of feminism's impact there.
But then, almost immediately, another common counterargument popped up. Maybe the difference in top positions isn't about exclusion or barriers, but just that women and men have different interests.
The different choices argument.
Exactly. Someone posed the question, I don't know why there has been this idea that women should want to aspire to work 80 hours a week in order to be on par with men. Like maybe women just don't want those high-pressure jobs as much.
Which brings us back to that career-family tension again, in a way.
It does. And the Average Intelligence podcast reactor offered a really interesting kind of cautionary thought here. It was quite nuanced.
What was the warning?
They sort of flipped Adam's point. If old cultural forces kept women out of certain fields, could feminism, ironically, now be pushing women into fields they might not naturally choose or prefer just to achieve numerical equality?
Oh, interesting. Like creating a new kind of pressure, even if the intention is good.
Exactly. Could a movement designed to break down barriers inadvertently create new expectations or pressures that don't align with everyone's genuine desires?
That connects right back to the bigger picture, doesn't it? Yeah. This whole debate about innate interests versus socially constructed interests. How much is choice truly free, and how much is shaped by culture, past or present?
It's a deep philosophical question, really.
It is, because true freedom, arguably, for anyone, means having the real ability to choose your path without being pushed or pulled too hard by external forces, whether those forces are old traditions or new cultural expectations.
Finding that balance is tricky.
Extremely tricky. You want total equality of opportunity, no question. No artificial barriers keeping women out of anywhere.
Right.
But at the same time, you have to respect that individuals, regardless of gender, might have genuinely different levels of ambition, different preferences, maybe a desire for a different work-life balance.
So the reactor's concern was, could feminism, in its push for equality outcomes, accidentally create new pressures that might actually narrow genuine individual choice for some women?
That seemed to be the crux of it. It's a subtle but really important distinction to think about. Are we promoting freedom to choose, or are we subtly prescribing what should be chosen in the name of equality? Feminism's impact on men and societal norms.
Okay, so shifting gears again, the conversation turned to feminism's impact on men. And Candace Owens had a pretty strong take here, too.
Let me guess, not necessarily positive.
Not from her perspective. She argued feminism has actually made things easier for men.
Easier? How so?
Because, she claimed, Men don't have to commit, and they're being offered sex from women for free.
Ah, the hookup culture argument tied to feminism.
Exactly. Her point was this reduces men's motivation, their sense of responsibility. It lets them, quote, step away from all of the responsibilities of what it really meant to be a man and lead a household.
Okay, so linking readily available sex to a decline in male commitment and traditional roles.
Yeah. And she framed relationships in really stark, almost primal terms. Hunter versus prey.
Wow. That's quite a framing for human relationships.
Yeah, it is. And Jenny, another participant, immediately pushed back on that. She argued that women having the freedom to not commit and not tie ourselves to one man for the rest of our life doesn't decrease our value.
Asserting female autonomy in relationships.
Right. She talked about sex as connection and intimacy and basically asked why women should be denied that gratification just to uphold some older model of male motivation.
So, a clash between viewing sex as transactional leverage versus personal connection and freedom.
Definitely. You really see that push and pull, individual freedom versus these perceived broader societal consequences. Now, the Average Intelligence podcast reactor, analyzing this bit, was quite measured.
What was their take?
They conceded that, yeah, maybe hookup culture could be seen as a byproduct of feminism's emphasis on female sexual liberation, but they stressed it wasn't an inevitable consequence.
Okay, correlation, not necessarily causation again.
Right. And they really strongly disapproved of Candace's language.
Yeah.
Goods, the hunter-prey stuff. They called it objectifying, which seems fair.
It does reduce people to roles or commodities, doesn't it? And what's really critical here, I think something for you listening to really latch onto, is how often these complex human behaviors get boiled down to really simplistic biological determinism.
Like the hunter-prey idea.
Exactly. Candace's argument leans heavily on that kind of biological impulse thinking.
Right.
You know, like some evolutionary psychology theories might suggest certain innate drives.
Right.
But the reactor pushed back hard against that, and I think for very good reason. Yes, we have biological predispositions, of course, but humans uniquely have this capacity for conscious thought, for impulse control, for reasoning. We're not just animals acting on instinct.
We can choose differently.
We could choose differently. Think about it. Rape is a crime, right? It's not excused as just an uncontrollable biological urge. Why? Because it violates consent, human agency. Or think about eating. We might biologically crave sugar, but most of us can control how much cake we eat. Right. So reducing the incredible complexity of human relationships, love, commitment, intimacy, responsibility, down to a crude hunter versus prey model just dismisses everything that makes us human. Free will, emotion, mutual respect, the sheer variety of healthy ways people connect.
It's a huge oversimplification.
A dangerous one, I'd argue.
And then, honestly, then the discussion just went off the rails, didn't it? Straight into the make me a sandwich trope.
Oh, that, yes, because of Candace's book title, Make Him a Sandwich.
Right. And when I watched that part, I just thought, oh, come on. We're having this complex, sometimes fraught discussion about gender roles, economics, societal shifts, and suddenly we're talking about sandwiches.
It feels like such a trivialization, doesn't it?
Completely. The Average Intelligence podcast reactor did not hold back on this one. They were pretty passionate, called it dumb and ridiculous.
Can't say I disagree.
They even shared a little personal anecdote, right? Saying their fiancé is the better cook, but they cook when needed. The point being, it's about practicality and who's better at what, or who's available, not some rigid gender rule.
Just basic adulting, really.
That's what they said. They made this blunt point. If you are an adult and you are incapable of cooking a meal, you're less than useless. Maybe harsh, but the underlying point about basic life skills holds.
And we connect that back to the bigger picture. These kinds of arguments, resorting to stereotypes like make me a sandwich, just completely obscure any progress we've made in talking about real partnerships.
Derails the whole conversation.
Totally. Shared responsibilities, individual skills, mutual contribution. That's how modern relationships tend to work best.
Yeah.
Right? Reducing it to who makes the sandwiches just detracts from any meaningful analysis of gender roles today. It's unhelpful and, frankly, pretty boring.
Agreed. Okay. But the conversation did get back to something more substantial, the economics of parenthood. And this is where it got really interesting, particularly the reactor's perspective.
Right. This was Adam's point initially.
Yeah. Adam argued that the current system of our economy is not tailored to make it easy for women to combine kids and careers. He mentioned resume gaps, the extra burden often falling on mothers.
Acknowledging the structural challenges.
Right. And he seemed to kind of imply that feminism by pushing women into the workplace without fixing the system first, maybe inadvertently created these problems. He also suggested that solutions like government-mandated paid maternity leave weren't really working perfectly either.
Okay, pointing out potential flaws in common policy solutions.
But then the average intelligence podcast reactor, tapping into their own experience, offered a totally different take and a different solution.
This is a small business angle, right?
Exactly. They argued really passionately against broad government mandates, believing they will hurt some small companies. Instead, they advocated for more supporting small businesses as job creators.
Interesting. Why small businesses specifically?
Because, drawing on their own experience as a small business owner, they felt these smaller outfits often have a more family-like environment. They argued there's often a greater understanding of family needs, more flexibility compared to giant corporations where employees might just be numbers.
So, suggesting a different economic structure might be more conducive to work-life balance than top-down mandates.
That was the core of it, and this really raises a huge question, doesn't it? How well do these big policy ideas actually match the reality on the ground for different kinds of businesses? Can a one-size-fits-all approach really work, or does it create unintended harm?
It's a classic tension. The reactor's economic argument was pretty forceful. They pushed back hard on the idea that the government subsidizes small businesses, claiming, in their experience, taxes are the #1 expense.
Right, challenging a common perception.
And it highlights that core dilemma. Everyone agrees supporting new parents is good, fostering gender equality is good. Paid leave is a key part of that. But how you implement it matters hugely.
The mechanism makes all the difference.
Exactly. Could a broad, maybe unfunded mandate disproportionately hit small businesses, potentially harming the very places the reactor thinks might offer better, more personalized support?
It's a really complex policy knot.
It is. No easy answers. But it's a great example of how economic realities often complicate even the best-intentioned social policies. It's not about if we support parents, but figuring out how to do it effectively and sustainably across businesses of all sizes. The final takeaways and lingering questions.
So, as things started to wrap up in the Jubilee video, Jenny offered her final takeaway. She said, "I believe feminism is wrongly interpreted as anti-men when it benefits both men and women."
Okay, a concluding statement about the overall benefit of feminism.
Yeah. And the Average Intelligence podcast reactor had an interesting assessment of this claim. They called it a great claim for sparking discussion, but also a really bad claim in terms of actually proving it.
Why bad for proving?
Because, as they pointed out, its truth just depends entirely on specifics. Who you're talking about specifically, and crucially, which definition or version of feminism you're even using.
Right. Feminism isn't monolithic.
Not at all. The reactor acknowledged that, yeah, some feminists probably do dislike men, or at least are highly critical of male behavior and structures. And they also noted that the term patriarchy itself often carries this inherently negative weight in these discussions.
Implying that male control is an inherently bad thing, as they put it.
Exactly. Rather than just describing a system, the word itself often comes loaded with judgment. It's just such a powerful reminder of how slippery labels are. They mean different things to different people, which makes having a constructive conversation incredibly hard sometimes.
And what's absolutely fascinating there, and maybe the core lesson, is how the language we choose can literally shape or even doom a conversation from the start.
Predetermine the outcome, almost.
Almost. It just underscores, again, how vital it is to define your terms. To acknowledge that huge internal diversity within any big movement like feminism, sweeping statements about feminism or patriarchy just crumble when you hit specific examples or different interpretations.
They don't hold up to scrutiny?
Not usually. And using loaded terms like patriarchy without clarification can steer the whole debate.
Yeah.
Are you just describing a historical power structure? Or are you making an inherent moral judgment from the outset?
You need that clarity.
You absolutely need clarity and precision if you actually want understanding, not just conflict. Otherwise, yeah, you're just talking past each other.
And speaking of talking past each other, the reactor also had some pretty sharp words for the format of the Jubilee surrounded show itself.
Oh, yeah. What did they say about the format?
They expressed deep frustration, stating pretty bluntly that the format doesn't incentivize a good faith debate. It incentivizes going viral.
Prioritizing clicks over substance.
That was the implication. They observed that participants often seem to achieve virality by talking over the other person and, quote-unquote, overwhelming them.
Making the other person look bad, essentially.
Right, so that particularly to the untrained eye, they look stupid. It's a really sobering thought, isn't it? That some platforms might be actively designed for viral moments rather than for genuine, respectful exchange of ideas.
It really makes you question the media you consume and why it's structured the way it is.
Definitely.
And if we connect that to the bigger picture, recognizing the intent of the format is so helpful for you, the listener. It helps you filter. Are you watching something designed for genuine insight or something designed primarily for entertainment and conflict?
Knowing the difference is key.
It's crucial. It brings up that question of responsibility, doesn't it? For content creators or platforms, are they fostering productive dialogue or just performative conflict? In this age of information overload, understanding the incentives behind the content is maybe your best defense for critical thinking.
Knowing if it's a performance or an exploration.
Exactly, because debates designed to win or go viral will almost always sacrifice depth, nuance, and understanding for heat and light, for sensationalism. It makes it way harder for you, the audience, to actually grasp the real issues.
Okay, so we have definitely unpacked a lot from watching this analysis of the Jubilee video via the Average Intelligence podcast. We've gone from the sexual revolution's contested impact through gender roles, happiness stats, power dynamics, all the way to the nature of online debate itself.
It covered a lot of ground. We saw how definitions are crucial, how statistics can be weapons, really, and how underlying biases, conscious or not, just permeate every argument.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Well, as you keep navigating this ocean of information online, especially on topics this complex, this charged, try to remember some of these things we've talked about.
Yeah, recognize that getting a truly well-informed view usually means looking past the easy surface arguments. It means critically checking the sources, questioning the definitions people are using, and thinking about the real intent behind the conversation.
Don't just swallow it whole. Peel back those layers.
Absolutely.
And maybe here's a final provocative thought for you to mull over, something to take away from this. When you do encounter these debates online, maybe even in person, that feel like they're designed to win rather than actually enlighten, what's your personal strategy? How do you sort the truth from the performance? And maybe more importantly, how do you make sure you're not just consuming information passively, but actively understanding it, engaging with it critically?
We choose to go to the moon and dictate and do the other things.
Weird.
You know, someone said that frickin' Panera's Pepsi's taste funny.
Better.
No, I mean,
What?